You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast. This is the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me at official Sam Little on Instagram. There's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. And we are in episode 55 and all the fives being thrown around. There's also one more five, and today marks 500 days until the World Cup kicks off here in Canada, and of course the States and Mexico, but Canada is hosting. But yeah, no, just figured I'd put that out there just because that sounds like it's a long ways away, but you and me, my friend, we both know that the 500 days will go by extremely quickly, like very, very quickly. So just wanted to kind of put that out there, and in 500 days time, you can think back to this moment and go, oh wow, that was 500 days ago. And that is 500 days as of recording this episode. I believe tomorrow the episode will go up, so it'll technically be 499, but who's counting? Me, obviously. But as you know by now, Maple Footy Podcast wouldn't be complete without its proper start, the Maple Start. So let's start Mapley. So first, kicking off with a lot of CPL news. There was a ton this week, as there has been the last couple weeks. I kept up and took notes on it as much as I kind of could and saw. So a lot of transfers, of course, as it is. Guess what? The transfer window. Stefan Yates making the move to York. I actually really rate Yates. Coming from Pacific, obviously, and then he spent time with TFC for a little bit, so now going back to York. I know it's not technically TFC, but in the Toronto area, it's nice for him to kind of get to go closer to home, I would assume. So yeah, definitely, I'm actually a real big fan of Yates, so I hope he does really well. York actually made a lot of signings in the last little bit, some off-goings too, but they did just sign a defender this morning. Let me quickly check who that was. Orlando Botello was the defender. That was not signed this morning. They actually offloaded a defender going to Ottawa. Nathan Abetna was the man that left. That's why I got all confused. So yes, they brought in Botello, and Abeta went to Atletico Ottawa. Sorry about the confusion. They also signed another defender, York. This is, of course, Luke Singh. He spent the last couple of seasons with Atletico Ottawa, of course, and for TFC fans, you'll probably remember him being a part of your backline on a number of occasions. So another Toronto boy going back to Toronto, of course, like I said, not with TFC, but in amongst the Toronto area. And by the way, just like looking at York's Instagram, it is so clean to look at. Like, I don't know who runs this Instagram, but my goodness, it's very nice. I mean, actually, in all fairness, most, if not all of the CPL teams, like their Instagrams are just so they're just so pleasing to the eye, like I think Forge is good, Ottawa's good, York is really good. But yeah, no, just totally off topic, but just giving them their props. Speaking of Forge, they were also busy. They signed Nimick, of course, from Halifax. He's, of course, quite the player, and I'll be very, very excited to see him line up with Janssen. I think that'll be very good. Also, it was made official, as I've kind of speculated on this podcast here. Mobabuli is back in Forge. Obviously was out of contract with York at the end of last season. And yeah, I mean, he was very good with Forge last time out. Of course, was very good with York. And now coming back to Forge, I think that not only adds another just top player in the CPL, but also adds some depth too, like him, Tristan Borges, Brian Wright, in those attacking positions. And of course, you can also play both him and Borges in the midfield with Becker, Jensen. Yeah, these Forge is starting to shape up once again. Quite the good roster. Shocking, I know, right? Forge getting a good roster. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's what they do. Obviously, not complaining, because I will love watching Forge if they go on and have another successful season. But it wasn't all incomings, as Jabalpur has officially left the club, which was already known. But I'm mentioning this because rumor has it he's on trial with Orlando in the MLS. So hope that works out for him. Would love to see him playing in the MLS. I do think he would be a great addition to Orlando, and I rate him very highly, as I do with most of the players in the CPL. So anyone that kind of gets another move, I will always hope that they do the best, or at least get given the opportunity. I hope he doesn't just like go somewhere, whether it's Orlando or whether it's not, and then just, never gets a shot. So hopefully, best of luck to him. And one more piece on Forge. Rumor has it they're bringing back Rama, the right back. It would be a loan deal. I can't remember what club he's playing at the moment. That's my bad. Probably should have written that down. But yeah, he's not getting a bunch of playing time there. So Forge is looking like they could be bringing him back, especially with the departure of Malcolm Duncan. They will need a right back. So obviously, Rama, he was very good when Forge had him last, so expect more of the same if he does come. Chong has made his way back to Pacific as well. Once again, another former TFC alum there. Quite the good player. He's very good. Had a very good time in the CPL as well, so expect more of the same, honestly. And then, of course, in a behind-the-closed-doors game, Cavalry drew with LAFC 1-1. So I think that's pretty massive, if you ask me. Both teams kind of having their preseason at the moment. I think that's a pretty big deal. We'll see how the rest of their preseason shapes out. And, obviously it's a big season for them coming up. Going to have to defend that North Star Cup. So that's enough ramble on the CPL. But don't worry, there's still some more Canadian news as another transfer. Nathan Saliba, the best Saliba in world football, could be on his way to Frankfurt. I think that would be a massive move given that how good Frankfurt are at the moment. And, another Canadian in the Bundesliga, Alphonso Davies, has found a lot of success in the Bundesliga. So if Nathan Saliba can find even a quarter of that success, I would say it was quite a successful move. Another transfer, of course, Tajon Buchanan, very up in the air at the moment. Inzaghi saying he wants to keep Tajon Buchanan so he can fight for his place. Tajon Buchanan and Jesse Marsh seem to be under the impression that they would like for Tage to leave so that Tajon can get more minutes. There's currently Torino, Valencia, a couple other La Liga sides, apparently Roma. There's a lot of teams that are apparently suitors for him. I take all the teams with a pinch of salt, but I do believe that there would be a lot of suitors for him just because he has quality. But yeah, my only thing is if Inzaghi wants him to stay, then Inzaghi should maybe play him for more than 5 minutes per match. Of course, Tajon Buchanan played about half an hour over the weekend, so that's definitely good. But he can't be surviving off of 1.5 hour appearance every 5 games, and the other 3 that he plays in, he's playing for 10 minutes, and then the other one he doesn't touch the field. So he needs more than that. He's quality. If you're not going to play him, let him go. That's kind of what I think. Alistair Johnston's Celtic has qualified for the knockout stages of the Champions League, so congratulations to big Alistair Johnston. Always having a good season, it feels like, with Celtic. Jonathan David also continued his fine goal-scoring form against the Giants. Of course, this time he wasn't on the winning side. He did lose to Liverpool 2-1. Well, Lille lost to Liverpool 2-1. He is a part of Lille. That's Madrid, both Madrids, Juve, and Liverpool that he's scored against. Yeah, he's kind of coming out against the Giants and really showing that he belongs, which we love to see. More transfer news, of course. Jaden Nelson has found his way to the Whitecaps. He returns to the MLS after a brief stint in Europe, was playing in the Norwegian League, and was also on loan in Germany. So hopefully, I think he's quite the good player. That's my opinion. I think there's a lot of potential there. He's still young, only 22 years old. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here. The Whitecaps are right now, in my opinion, probably the best Canadian MLS side. No disrespect to the other two, just right now the Whitecaps just feel like they are the most well-respected at the moment. But, we know how TFC and Montreal can be. They can obviously go and make a run, and we'll see. TFC's got new manager, some new players. Could they be turning around? We don't know. Montreal also has some good players, so no disrespect to the other two teams. Ishmael Kone could be, who knows, leaving Marseille. De Zerbi doesn't seem to rate him. Yeah, I don't know why. I really don't. It baffles me. Like, the talent's there. I don't know, maybe Kone's got like a bad attitude, but I don't even know how he'd have the opportunity to have a bad attitude since he was injured at the start of the season, then picked up another knock. So like, and then by the time he got back, De Zerbi's mind seemed to be made up on him already. So I don't know. Every manager sees it differently. Obviously, I'm not in the training ground or in the team meetings or nothing like that. But yeah, I just don't know. Something doesn't feel right with that situation. But regardless, seems like Kone at some point, whether it's this window or next window, could be on his way out for Marseille. He didn't pick up any minutes over the weekend against Nice, nor did Derek Cornelius. So we were robbed of a Cornelius versus Bombito matchup. But oh well. And we're really ending this one on a downer, this Maple start. But Alphonso Davies looks to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks with a hamstring injury. Very, very, very depressing. Hopefully it's not too bad, but we know how hamstrings can be. They can be very, very strange. So hopefully he is okay, and we'll be looking forward to seeing him back on the pitch. With all that being said, let us move into the Prem recap. If you're new, because yes, by the way, Maple Footy is now on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. Sorry, just in case you're still listening on YouTube, which you still can, of course, because it is still available on YouTube as well. But if you are listening elsewhere and you have found this podcast, thank you, welcome. I hope you enjoy this. So we start with match of the weekend, then we move into biggest winners of the weekend, biggest underperformers, best performance, moment of the weekend, relegation zone, European places, and finally title race. So let's move into match of the weekend first. Yeah, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. Who saw this coming? Like, I have been extremely like high praise for both Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest throughout this season. Never did I expect 5-0 Bournemouth. That's kind of crazy. Like, excuse me, I beg your pardon, what? Are we sure that's right? No, it's right. I watched as much of it as I could. I watched the highlights back just to make sure. It did, in fact, happen. Justin Kluivert, once again, with a big performance. That's many big performances that Justin Kluivert has had. He's had a very good season, if you ask me, as has most of Bournemouth, in all fairness. But yeah, no, it was just because even Nottingham Forest has lost a couple of games this season, right? As we know, they've never been blown out. Like, even against City, they lost 3-0. And, like, it's like, okay, that's against Manchester City. They got quality. Like, Manchester City, they can just turn it on, right? And this is no disrespect to Bournemouth, but it's like 5-0 to Bournemouth? That was the most shocking. This may not be match of the weekend. I think it might be the most shocking match of the weekend, just because... How? What happened? Yeah, Nottingham Forest, who've notoriously been hard to break down this season, were very easy to break down on the day. Sells felt like he was letting in any shot he could. Nico Williams and Ola Aina were nowhere to be found. Their center backs weren't really contributing much either. Midfield, Yates, Anderson, Gibbs, White were losing the ball. Chris Wood was a non-factor. Elanga wasn't much of a factor either. It was a very strange one to watch because you just kind of saw the dismantling of Nottingham Forest by Bournemouth, by Areola, who seems to be proving himself a bit of a tactical wizard at the moment. In my opinion, you could make the case to call him manager of the year at this point. I think, well, he's building off a great season last year, and it's even better this year, if we're being honest. Like, Bournemouth have been even better this year, and they were very good last year. Came out of nowhere last year. Now this year they've come out of nowhere again somehow. But yeah, no, this was a crazy one. Some of the goals were very nice. I mean, that Kluivert goal, his one that stood was very nice. His one that was disallowed was also nice. It was a shame it was disallowed. But yeah, he grabs an assist too. Dango Otaro gets a hat trick. And then Semenyo is the icing on the cake, grabs himself one in the 91st minute. By the way, Daniel Jebison, potential, we could be looking at him, got on in the last couple minutes. He could also declare for England as well, so that's why I say potential Canada. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just speechless because I don't know what to say. It was very surprising because like Forest isn't a bad team. Maybe it was just a bad day at the office. Bournemouth just did their homework. I don't know, but something Bournemouth did was very, very correct, and they just didn't lay off the gas either. They're so entertaining to watch. Like really, if you're neutral, right, you have to be watching Bournemouth at least once or twice. Like it's well worth it. They're very exciting to watch, very entertaining. They're so fluid too. Like I said, with guys like Kluivert, just in top form right now and proving to be the player that I think we were kind of all hoping he would kind of turn into, and he has turned into that player for sure this season. So that's got to be one of my matches of the weekend. If you haven't, at bare minimum, watched the highlights for this game, it's well worth it. Outside of Bournemouth and Forest, there wasn't really many matches that like moved me all that much, if I'm being honest with you. The only other one that was kind of worth mentioning, I wouldn't even say like quality-wise it was a great match, but I would say Leicester's big win against Tottenham. I've been extremely critical of Leicester this entire season, but I mean, take it as you will. They did beat Tottenham, so I mean. Is it really a big win? I don't know. That's up for debate, but it is a big win. Of course, I'm just messing around. But yeah, I mean, like I said, quality wasn't the best in this match. Let's be real. But I think just the context of, I don't think, even though Tottenham have been quite bad recently, like real bad, I don't think anyone expected Leicester to go to Tottenham and beat them, especially with how poor Leicester has been too. Like this felt like, okay, Tottenham can maybe build something here, get a little confidence boot. No, they don't. And I think it's a missed opportunity, honestly, especially with their second leg against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup coming up very soon. I can't remember the exact date of that, but it is quite soon. And they're in real bad form, and they'll be traveling to Anfield for that as they are in search for a trophy. So yeah, fans are displeased. I saw there was a banner and displayed by Tottenham fans. I think it read something like 27 years, one trophy, time for change, something like that. I don't have the screenshot on me. I should have taken the screenshot. I just saw it on either Twitter or Instagram, one of the two. But yeah, it was a sign like that. So obviously a lot of discontent in the fandom. I think the players have kind of shut off. I'm not that I ever advocate for someone to lose their job. I'd be very, very shocked to see Ange lasting the season at Tottenham. I just don't see it. He looks defeated. And yeah, I just don't know where they go from here, as has been, I think, the case with Tottenham. With every managerial sacking since Poch, like they sacked Poch, they get Jose. Jose doesn't work out, so they sack him, get Conte. Doesn't work out, sack him, get Nuno, doesn't work out, sack him, get Ange, doesn't work out, rinse and repeat. Let's talk about winners of the weekend. I'm not going to waste too much time on Bournemouth because I just discussed in depth their game. But yeah, Bournemouth is 1,000% here. The result does keep them in 7th. They don't move, but they are 1 point off of top 4 and 4 points off of Nottingham Forest, who they did beat. So yeah, I mean, like I've been saying, this top 4 race is very, very close and very congested, and you have teams hitting form, real good form, right at the right time. So another team we're going to say is a winner of the weekend is Newcastle. That's because they also grab a big win in crunch time. Well, I don't want to say crunch time because there is still a good few games left, but in clutch time, I guess that kind of works. In an important time of the season is my point that I'm trying to make here. Yeah, I mean, it was against Southampton, so it was kind of expected that Southampton wasn't going to win this one. Sorry, Southampton. But Alexander Isak gets another 2 goals. Sandro Tonali gets 1 as well. And I think it's very big, especially with Chelsea dropping points. Manchester City, of course, having that slow bit in the season, keeping Newcastle, Bournemouth, all in and amongst that top 4 race. So Newcastle is tied on points with City and 3 points off of Forest. It's very close up there. It is very close, and I wouldn't be totally surprised if I see Newcastle really mount a run here. I mean, they've had a good run of form in the last bunch of matches, as they have, of course, bid farewell to Mikel Almiron, by the way. I think that transfer was made official today. I saw Fabrizio report on it. But yeah, since December 14th, have only lost one game. So yeah, they're doing pretty good at the moment. But yeah, no, this is the time of the season where you really need to be getting these big results when you need to. And I know we joke and say, oh, well, of course, they were expected to win against Southampton. But, sometimes these teams slip up and they do lose to a Southampton. And then you look back at the end of the season and go, wow, they didn't beat Southampton, and that's what cost them. So that's a big, it could be big in the context of trying to get Europe. And yeah, just the fact of teams dropping points and Newcastle capitalizing on that's always massive in a Champions League title race, relegation race. It's always important to capitalize when teams around you are dropping points. Last one is Everton, just because it's another big win for them under David Moyes. Since he's come in, they have looked a lot better. They don't really look in much jeopardy of relegation at the moment, at least. They're 6 points up on Leicester with a game in hand, and Leicester is in 17th, so they're not even in the relegation zone. They are 7 points clear of the actual relegation zone. Of course, Leicester is in the relegation fight, but yeah, it's good to be Everton under Moyes, I guess, right? And it was against Brighton too, so I think that's a pretty big victory. So that's Tottenham and Brighton back to back. Those are two big statements by David Moyes coming in. I bet you West Ham's kind of wishing they didn't, right? West Ham's got to be regretting sacking him. It can't just be me that thinks that, right? But yeah, no, I think that's massive for Everton. Like I said, it doesn't really feel like they're in much danger at the moment anymore, which shocks me because I really thought this could be the season that they go down. Obviously, still time in the season, but I think it would take a pretty big slip up and a pretty big point gain by any of Leicester, Wolves, or Ipswich to kind of capitalize on those. So, yeah. Biggest underperformers, I'm going to rattle off a few just because I got a rant I got to get out of the way. So I apologize if you were really looking for me to get negative about certain teams, but there will be one team in particular I am extremely negative about. So just rattling off a couple of underwhelmers this weekend. Of course, the usual suspect of Tottenham is here, and I think they will consistently be here unless something changes. So at that point then, as I've said before, is it really underwhelming if you're expected to underwhelm? Because then you're just doing the expectation, which is just to not be great. Anyways, of course, I think you have to put Nottingham Forest. This could just be a blip, or is it the cracks really starting to show in this Forest side? Time will tell, but off of this isolated game, they have to be in the underwhelmers. And of course, the big one, yeah, it's been coming, Chelsea Football Club. What the hell are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing? I'm so baffled. And yeah, it was against Manchester City. Okay. We had that game in that first 10 minutes alone that we should have been coasting to a 3-0 minimum halftime. And then even if City gets one after that, come on. We had them. It was crazy. It was baffling. Wasted opportunities. Cole Palmer should have done better when feeding Nicholas Jackson. There was a couple other ones that are escaping me because I'm just so hot from this game. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I genuinely have never wondered more about a coach's coaching ability based off of one loyalty to a player, and it's baffling to me. How in the world is Robert Sanchez Chelsea's number one goalkeeper? And this sentiment echoes throughout the entire Chelsea fan base, and this is no slight on Robert Sanchez's character. I'm sure he's probably a fine person. He is not a number one in the Premier League, never mind a number one for Chelsea Football Club. He is consistently being put out there and leading to an error and it costing Chelsea literal matches. He's costing us matches every single time he steps onto the pitch. And sometimes our team. Maybe it's Madueke, maybe it's Palmer, maybe it's Sancho, maybe it's Caicedo, whoever. Maybe they cover for him. But at this point, I'm convinced if we scored 5, he would make sure we concede 6. It is baffling to me. And Enzo Maresca throwing his team under the bus to prop up Robert Sanchez, because he was putting up quotes of how many times has Moises Caicedo missed a pass this season, how many times has Noni Madueke missed a cross this season, but because he's a goalkeeper, we talk about it more. That's obviously paraphrasing. It was something along those lines. So he's actively throwing his own team under the bus to prop up a guy that I honestly think I could find a better, like, non-professional goalkeeper. Like, seriously, it's baffling to me. Any choice that you could think he could make wrong, he's gonna make it wrong, and he's gonna make it even more wrong than you thought he could make wrong. It's baffling to me. You are in a top 4 race. You were second in the league. You were second in the league like a month ago. And now you're bringing up quotes of, well, over the last month or so, we've improved. You haven't. You've regressed. It's baffling to me. I don't know what's happened with Enzo Maresca. I mean, I'm starting to see why he potentially nearly dropped a 30-point championship lead with a Premier League caliber squad last season with Leicester, because his decisions have been baffling recently. Like, something that he felt like he couldn't get wrong at the start of the season. There was like a stretch of games, there was like his decisions were on it. He was making substitutions, they were working. And since then, it's been nothing. It's baffling to me. And I've gone easy on Chelsea these last few weeks. Solely because, of course, it's my team, so I carry that bias with me. But my goodness, this game, it sent me through the friggin' roof. It's a laughingstock. It's genuinely a laughingstock. And the fact that I'm watching Robert Sanchez run to a ball that Erling Haaland has on his foot, whilst Trevor Chalobah has Haaland covered, whilst Cucurella is running back to help cover, and Sanchez runs out of his goal like a friggin' headless chicken, and then Haaland goes, okay, thanks, I'll just score then, and then does, and then there's that shot of Enzo Fernandez just head in his hand, because that to me was so symbolic, because he has been a very good performer, I think, for Chelsea this season. It's so baffling to watch that and go, yep, I totally understand you, Enzo, because it's how I think most fans feel of, like, it just doesn't matter when you have someone that liable in the back of the net. And what baffles me even more, by the way, is since Boehly and co took over, Chelsea have brought in like friggin' 100 goalkeepers and have loaned out all the good ones, and we're stuck with Robert Sanchez. Jorgensen, I don't know if he's any good or not. He's played twice for Chelsea. He looked pretty good in the Premier League, of course. He's played in Conference League and Cup games, so he's played more than twice for Chelsea, technically. But twice in the Premier League. He didn't look terrible against Ipswich. Thought it was hard done by to give away a penalty. And, I mean, he looked good against Southampton, but, it's Southampton. So I don't know if he's any better than Sanchez. I can't believe he's any worse. And, of course, this doesn't just come down to Robert Sanchez or even Enzo Maresca. I don't know what the plan is. I really don't. And I will hold my hands up. Things were looking good at the start of the season. Boehly and co, I think they were kind of winning me over. I was like, maybe this transfer strategy works. I don't know what it is. I really don't. Like, what is the transfer strategy? They're just bringing in anybody. Like, we're looking at Garnacho right now. Why are we looking at Garnacho? Look at a striker. Look at a goalkeeper. Why are we bringing in Garnacho? We don't need another winger. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. It's so frustrating, and I'm sure many Chelsea fans feel the same way. So if you're a Chelsea fan, just know you're not alone in this. I was seeing it all on Twitter over the weekend, and yeah, just the sentiment in the fan base is just kind of not just like mad and frustrated, but just confused as to how our season took this turn. Things were looking so good just like a month ago, and now all of a sudden we're in a dogfight for a top 4 that we may not even get. And if we miss out on Champions League again this season, how long is it going to take for certain guys to want to leave? I'm talking your Cole Palmers, I'm talking Enzo Fernandez, I'm talking Moises Caicedo, guys that are genuinely like either bordering world class or are just straight up world class players, or at least have the potential to be world class players. Like, if we keep on missing the big competitions, these guys aren't going to want to stay. Like, but they have 9-year contracts. It doesn't matter. These contracts, especially in soccer more than I think any sport, aren't worth the paper they are printed on. If these guys want a way out, they'll find a way out. If it's not written into their contract already, that is. So anyways, Chelsea rant, that was, I don't know how long that was, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, I don't know. So I hope you enjoyed that. Need to let that off a little bit. I'm still not pleased. I probably haven't let it out enough. But that's just how I feel. I had to put them in the underwhelmers of the weekend because I honestly thought it was a disgusting, disgraceful, embarrassing, gutless performance from the manager and just a bad performance by the team on the pitch. Just left in a state of confusion and just sadness. It feels like that's the moniker of Chelsea Football Club at the moment, confused and sad. But anyways, we'll move on from this negative rant and move into the more positive. So let us talk about, firstly, Cody Gakpo, who I have really been a fan of this season, I think. And he had a great performance against Ipswich. He gets 2 goals and an assist on the weekend, and just his overall style of play I thought was really fun. He's been a very entertaining player to watch. I find he's always an outlet on that left-hand side, and it's still baffling to me that this guy was playing as like a striker last season when he is so clearly a left winger, and it's like the difference in his play when he's playing on the left versus last season when he was like being deployed as a striker is absurd. He looks a different player, and I mean that in the most positive way possible because he had a very, very good game, given Ipswich all kinds of problems. They really couldn't keep up with him. I mean, the only thing that I can kind of slight his performance on is that he wasn't left on to try and finish a hat trick, because I really do think it was on for him on the day. I think he could have gotten it if he was left on, but after his second goal, Arne Slot looked like he wanted to kind of bring some guys off that had played a lot. So your Gakpos, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, and then later on in the match, McAllister, Luis Diaz, they were all subbed out. Obviously, a lot of games that they have played this season and still many more to come over the course of this season. So that would be the only slight on his performance, the fact that he wasn't allowed to potentially get his hat trick. But yeah, I thought he was a lot of fun to watch, always creating something or always an outlet to be the recipient of like a final ball, and of course obviously scoring twice. So yeah, gotta put Cody Gakpo here. I think he's had a very good season so far, but flown under the radar, I think. So definitely giving him his flowers in this episode for sure. I'm just going to list off Bournemouth as just performance. I thought they were unreal this weekend. So just Bournemouth as a whole, yeah, they're just all of them. You know, I don't think they had a bad performer, but a couple of like proper standouts. Semenyo, Kluivert, and of course, Dango Otara. Yeah, I mean, you know, leaving with a hat trick, leaving with a couple goals for the other two. Yeah, I mean, like, come on, that's rather good and definitely worthy of being in the performance of the weekend. That's, I think, 2 in a row now for Kluivert as well. So hang that on the fridge, you know. Maple Footy Performer of the Weekend 2 weeks in a row. Maybe you should go for 3, buddy. You got it. Sorry, just a little bit of self-deprecating humor. But another one, of course, Alexander Isak. I thought he was quite good as well. I mean, he's enjoying just an unreal season. A lot of teams are reportedly in for him. I honestly would be tempted if I was him to stay at Newcastle at the moment. I'll say that very quietly. But I think Newcastle's kind of pretty exciting. He's got it very well made there. The star man there for sure. Quite the good team around him. And I know, like, you know, teams like Arsenal, who are in for him, can be pretty tempting, especially when, you know, they're teasing title races every single year. So I can see why he'd want to leave and say go to like an Arsenal, or, you know, say Liverpool came in or Man City came in, you know, like the guys that you think will perennially be there. But yeah, at the moment, I'd kind of be tempted to stay maybe another season at Newcastle. Obviously, I'm not his agent, so, you know, he won't take my word. But yeah, no, I would really recommend he stay there, because 17 goals, 5 assists, and not only that, he's playing really well. Like, his overall play is really well. I think his hold-up play is quite good. He's not afraid to have the ball at his feet and kind of run. He's good in possession, can create things as well. So yeah, I think he's just a good overall player, not just striker, which I think is kind of becoming hard to come by. You either have strikers that are good players but can't strike, or you have strikers that are good finishers but they don't really do much else, whereas Isak feels like a good blend of both at the moment. So I don't know. I would be tempted to stay, but yeah, definitely a top performance from him this weekend. Leave Southampton with 2 goals. And yeah, I mean, you can't really slight that now, can you? Moment of the weekend now, me being put out of my misery when the final whistle was blown for Manchester City and Chelsea. That was a moment for me for sure, I think, and I think I can speak for most Chelsea fans when that game was over. It was just, yeah, good. I'm glad I don't have to watch that anymore. I think just kind of a fun one, though, like genuinely now, a real fun one was when Mbeumo took his penalty. Johan Wissa was already off celebrating. Like, he already knew Mbeumo was going to score. So if you saw that video kind of doing the rounds, it's just kind of like, I don't know, I just find it like really fun. You have that much confidence in your teammate, and especially in this age, if he had missed that, like that would have been memed into oblivion. So yeah, I just find that like really funny and just like, oh, like that's nice. Like, you know, obviously he's got confidence in his teammates. So I kind of like watching that kind of stuff. Other moments kind of actually coming more so towards the bottom of the table. Of course, Everton and Dye scores his penalty to grab them the winner, and then does a little seagull celebration, which I thought was very funny. But he got booked for that, which I thought was a bit much. I don't really think that's booking worthy, but you know, Premier League is going to Premier League, I guess. And then another big moment, of course, is Leicester's turnaround within about 4 minutes. They go from being 1-0 down to being 2-1 up, and then of course hold on to that 2-1 and then win the game. I think that's a huge moment for Leicester, and it could be something for them to build on going into this next bunch of games. And let's talk relegation zone now, since we just kind of mentioned two teams that have been synonymous with the relegation zone over the season. So you'll never believe this. Southampton are still at the bottom of the table, still stuck on those 6 points. Man, I say it every week. I just feel so bad for the supporters. They don't deserve this, because just what a bad way to kind of spend your season. You know, you just going into every game being like, yeah, we know we're not getting anything from this. Like, not even just like wanting to win, just like, you know, we're probably not even drawing. We'll be lucky to score kind of thing. And yeah, I feel for them, you know. Ipswich just above them. They always had a tough task going to Anfield to play Liverpool. I wasn't expecting them to win this one. But of course, only 1 point off of safety. So obviously, with how much time is left in the season, there is still time for them to kind of turn it around. Their next couple of matches are Southampton, actually, so that could be a good time to kind of try to make up points. But it could be that game where Southampton decide to lock in and play spoiler, really, because they'll know how much Ipswich will be wanting that win. After that, they got Villa, Tottenham, United. Not a fun stretch of games after Southampton. So a Southampton game I think could be absolutely vital for them. And then just above them are Wolves, who also dropped points this weekend, because why wouldn't you? They lost to Arsenal. Arsenal acting like they were the underdogs in that game. I don't know if anybody saw it, but Declan Rice posting on his Instagram against all odds. I don't know what odds they faced. Yeah, they got a player sent off, but Wolves also did. So it was 10v10, and Arsenal were literally the odds favorites for the entire match, even when they were down to 10 men. So, yeah, I don't know what odds we're talking about. But anyways, off track there. Wolves have Aston Villa next, then Liverpool, Bournemouth, Fulham. Also, not a fun stretch of games. So, Ipswich's saving grace here could be like, you know, where we all have tough games coming up. So not just Ipswich, Wolves as well. Their saving grace could also be, you know, we all have tough games. And just above Wolves, obviously Leicester coming in with a big win. I did not expect that at all. As you well know, if you've been listening throughout the season, I haven't rated Leicester. I haven't rated their heart, their character. I haven't rated anything. But they come out big when they needed to, and this could be the catalyst for them to potentially turn this around. Their next few matches are Everton, which is, I'd say, a pretty even match. Then Arsenal, Brentford, West Ham. I'd say that that's probably I don't want to say easiest, because that's not easy either, but of Wolves, Ipswich, Leicester, I feel like that's the most favorable run. I feel like they could get something from Everton. Probably not going to get much from Arsenal. Could get something from Brentford and West Ham as well. So I could see it. And then really, those are really feel like the 4 teams that are still stuck in this battle right now. Like, Everton feels like they're pretty much safe. Tottenham, I don't see them going down, although they're closer to a relegation battle than I think they'd like to admit. West Ham, Palace, they're both, like, once again, not mathematically safe, but they don't really feel like they're in any jeopardy. Just feel like, yeah, like they're probably just going to finish mid-table. Moving into the European spots, of course, Nottingham Forest are in third after this weekend, of course, famously losing to Bournemouth 5-0. Manchester City back into the top 4 because they beat Chelsea. Newcastle going up to 5th after their win, and then Chelsea, of course, dropping down to 6th. They're level on points with Bournemouth in 7th, and then just below Bournemouth is Villa, who it feels like those are now the teams kind of potentially still chasing Champions League. Teams like Brighton, Fulham, and Brentford feel like they're probably chasing like Europa Conference League and Europa League. It just depends on where those all land. And then, of course, as well, any of the teams that I had already mentioned could also still land in Europa Conference League and or Europa League. So yeah, I mean, it's heating up. I mean, if you look at the points difference, like Forest has 44, they're in third. Villa has 37. So only 7 points separating third to 8th. That's not a lot. So, like, realistically, like, obviously it would still take a little bit of luck and some good form for Villa to probably get into that top 4, but it could still feasibly happen. And then, of course, Bournemouth is extremely close. Chelsea, of course, feels like they're miles away, but are technically close. Newcastle, once again, like level on points with City. Like, City's just above them by 3 goals at the moment. So, yeah, it's very, very tight up there, and it's going to be a very interesting end to, I think, this top 4 race, and then seeing where everybody else lands because inevitably some of these guys will miss out on top 4 because there's only 4 spots, and there's a lot more than 4 teams that I just listed, and that's not even counting our 2 guys in the title race, Liverpool and Arsenal at the moment. You could probably still lump Nottingham Forest potentially into that, but being 9 points off of Liverpool with a game in hand, I can't really put them in the title race at this moment. If Liverpool drop points and Forest gain, then Forest are right back in it. But yeah, both teams getting big but expected wins. These are the games where, like, you still need to win them, obviously, but they're facing the relegation kind of battling sides with Arsenal facing Wolves and then Liverpool facing Ipswich, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and you have to beat what's in front of you, and both teams do that. Liverpool, of course, with the 4-1 thumping of Ipswich, and Arsenal with the more kind of tough, cagey affair that they do still scrape a win out of. So both of these teams, I still think Liverpool, it's in their hands. Like, as much as like I said in previous podcasts, haven't been extremely impressed by them this season. They were impressive on the weekend and have had, of course, a couple of very impressive games and very impressive outings. I still think that it's theirs to lose at this moment in time. This isn't me saying, pop the champagne, baby, they got it. But it does feel like if they don't win it from here, it's on them. Like, they would have done something wrong, whilst, of course, say an Arsenal or City would have picked up the slack. But yeah, it really does feel like if they don't get it from here, then it's something that they did, I would say. And then, of course, Arsenal kind of on the outside looking in on the title race. They can only do what they can do. They gotta hope that Liverpool drop points, but then Arsenal have to just keep winning and keep getting results if they want to keep challenging Liverpool, which is, of course, a possibility. So, yeah, I mean, I feel pretty content, I ranted a little bit, got to praise some teams that I like to watch, praise some players that I've liked, talked about other things, and yeah, I feel very content with calling it a day on that one. So thank you very much for listening. As I have mentioned, if you're still listening to these on YouTube, by no means is this me telling you to stop listening on YouTube, but just so you do know, they are available everywhere you get your podcasts. Like I said earlier, it's Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, Deezer, Pandora. You can get it right off of RSS.com. Oh my goodness, there's a whole list of them. Just anywhere that you could think of getting a podcast, you can get it. So if you like listening on YouTube, by all means, continue listening on YouTube. If you would like to chuck it on Apple Podcasts or whichever, by all means, it is there and definitely available for you to do so. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I do hope you've enjoyed. If you're new around these parts, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're going to come back for more. If you're a little bit older around these parts, I do hope that you continue coming back for more. And yeah, just thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates at Official Sam Little on Instagram, where I am most active. And until next time, live, laugh, little.